Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim. Tonight we have on panel Nos, Holly, and Nancy. Welcome, ladies. We also have a very prolific podcaster, decades-long interviewer of UFO. Influential UFO people and other people in power. This lady is very thorough with her investigations. She is a good source of data concerning the subject of alien life and UFO topics. So please welcome my good friend, KERRY CassIdy, back to the show.
Yay!
Thanks.
KERRY.
Okay. Now let's see here. I have an echo somewhere. Hold on a second, guys. Okay. I am going to make KERRY
Big.
big. There we go. All right. KERRY, I do have a question for you. For the people that don't know who you are, and I would find that kind of hard, but for the people who do not know who you are, can you give a little synopsis on what you've done for the past several decades and
no.
the
Okay.
interviews you've had and where your interests lie, whether it be UFOs or political, and kind of where you're going right now with your life?
Okay. Well, I picked up a consumer grade camcorder about 20 years ago and decided I wanted to make a UFO documentary. So I started interviewing people at conferences that were speaking. And I would put the camera in front of their face and ask them if they'd seen a UFO, because what I noticed at these conferences is that a lot of speakers would talk all night and day about the craft back then, but they would never talk about actually their own personal interaction with them or whether they'd been abducted or anything like that. So I thought that was very interesting. And prior to that, I worked in Hollywood for 20 years. I was working my way up the ladder, so to speak, when I kind of reached a glass ceiling, the Old Boys Network. And I was from Northern California. I was already a rebel at heart. I'd been, talking back to teachers since I was 12 years old or younger, and my parents as well. And so I didn't really fit in with the Old Boys Network. I did make some friends that did help me. I can't say they didn't, but for the most part, I was kind of like out there on my own, swimming on my own, and trying to move up the ladder to produce movies. I had a stunning experience when I was younger, seeing Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind in a theater. I was so amazed to see something on the screen that I knew was true in my real life because I'd been abducted. And so I thought when the movie was over that I'd walk outside the cinema and the whole world would be different. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And then I walked outside the theater and I noticed that no one was acting different. It was just normal life. And so I decided right then and there that I wanted to make sci-fi movies like Spielberg. However, my life took some interesting turns. I ended up studying acting and directing in a small studio, Sanford Meisner Technique, with a famous teacher who was teaching Hollywood stars called Robert X. Modica, is probably not even alive anymore, in New York City. And so I would study acting at night and do temp jobs during the day. So that was my introduction to working my way up and to trying to break into the business and all of that. And then I did make some headway in, I started independently packaging and trying to produce and sell movies and screenplays. And I reached again, sort of a hard ceiling where I didn't have, a track record. I didn't have money. I didn't have all the things you need to have. And I also didn't have high level executives that would, take me on board and all that kind of thing. So at that point, I guess I decided to pick up a consumer grade camcorder and make my own UFO documentary. And eventually I interviewed a person who became my partner in Project Camelot, whose name was Bill Ryan, and he was English, and he was out there representing the SERPO project, serpo.org, which happened to be, this is a coincidence, but I'm finding out nothing in my life is really a coincidence. It's all synchronicity. That he was representing serpo.org, which was a human alien exchange program that was depicted at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And we became partners. I basically had completed what was more or less my short UFO documentary, which is still available on my website, called Have You Seen a UFO? Where I'd had interviewed a lot of people, as I say, in this sort of off the cuff way. But because I studied acting and directing, and I also was a journalist in college. So I sort of had the package in terms of all the skill sets I needed to do the job I ended up doing, which is what I've been doing now for 20 years.
I was going to ask, is the Serpo project still operating?
Well, first of all, the Serpo, Serpo is one thing. So serpo.org, what it was talking about was a DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, as I say, a human alien exchange program. Apparently, some people say there were something like 10 of those. I don't think it's still operational, but I don't know that. Eventually, we really investigated it pretty far, and we actually drove to the home of one of the people that was involved. I think it was a general's house, and they took our information. We knocked on the door, and eventually, they were tracking us and all this kind of thing. So, but then, Bill Ryan and I met previous to that on this news group run by a guy named Victor Martinez, who didn't even know how to use the web really, but he knew how to use web TV. And he started this news group. I think he was a CIA asset or whatever you want to call that. And he was a school teacher, but he gathered together a group of very interesting scientists, journalists, podcasters back then. This is a long time ago, right? So it's 20 years ago. So it wasn't, the internet didn't, really get off on its feet until with YouTube and Google until right around that time. And I became, even before I met Bill, I became what's called a YouTube director. And they brought me on board because I went to film school and I worked in Hollywood, and I impressed them with my credentials and letters of recommendation. And so they gave me I could do 2-hour videos when everyone else was doing 10-minute segments. So that gave me sort of a leg up. And once I connected with Bill Ryan, we both, my mother had passed away. I had money to contribute to something. So I decided to pick up a consumer grade camcorder and make my documentary. Bill Ryan was one of the people I interviewed, and we hit it off and stayed in contact. He went back to England. I flew with a small inheritance to Egypt, that on a tour with William Henry and Jordan Maxwell. And on that tour, I actually interviewed Jordan Maxwell. I had no idea I was going to end up doing Project Camelot and interviewing people at that time. But
Right.
I started asking him questions, and like, had he ever had any alien, encounters and such? And he said, I will answer you and you can videotape me, but you can never release this until I say, because back in those days, any researchers never wanted to have the stigma that they had their own UFO experience, but he was having contact. So that was an amazing beginning to, I guess you might say, my career in Project Camelot.
That's very interesting. Nos?
You understand what it is to struggle to be able to do what you want. But I see at the same time, you understand that you ran into the problems in these other areas because you had finished what you needed to learn from those people to continue forward to set you where you needed to be. Right? It's like you could have been, you could have had that opportunity present itself a long time ago and gone on to be producing, entertainment sci-fi movies. And instead, because that didn't happen, you're involved in the most important story in history. I think that's a better trade-off.
Yeah, it's very interesting that my life took a twist. Had I been successful in what I was trying to do, which is make sci-fi blockbusters in essence, and I was writing screenplays, by the way, as well. I wrote a few sci-fi screenplays and tried to shop them and so on and so forth. So, then because I got this idea to pick up the camcorder and to make my own documentary, was when I went a different direction and actually broke into this world that now is very commonplace. Everyone and their brother has a channel, and they're trying to interview whistleblowers. But back in the day when I did it, or we did it in the very early days, we were really the first that used video, and actually we traveled the world on very little money, and in this funky car that Bill had, because he could drive from England to Europe. And so we would drive around Europe and go interview whistleblowers that we found out about that contacted us, and so on and so forth, in person with a handheld, in some cases, camera. And I was a filmmaker. I was trained, having gone to film school, of course. Mm-hmm. And then I trained Bill to also do that. And I trained myself to be an editor as well. So like I said, I was doing a documentary when I met him. Then I trained him to learn how to do all that. And so that he could also, because there's a famous radio talk show host named Jerry Pippin, who saw our work and was very impressed and said, listen, girl, you got to be on camera with the witness. And so I said, oh, really? And so that's when I started to be on camera as well. And so Bill had to, do more camera work. But, I had developed a whole, what I call guerrilla filmmaking style, where we didn't sit on ceremony. We didn't have a crew. We didn't have lights and all that fancy stuff. We didn't have fancy cameras, but I believed what I liked was the guerrilla filmmaking style of MTV back in those days, which was handheld and all that stuff. So I just copied that and did my own style. And I was also a director. I knew how to get a performance out of an actor. And I was also an actor, a trained actor. So when I interviewed somebody, I just considered myself to be the director, and I would ask them questions and provoke them. So I did not ask normal questions. Like, I wasn't a normal interviewer. I was more interested in getting their reaction. So, I would do things that are totally unorthodox, even today. I would interrupt them if I thought they were going down some mind-controlled droning. I'm very intuitive. I was a psychic intuitive my whole life. And I would just start, interrupting them and getting, sort of getting them riled up. And like I did that with Bob Dean, who was already famous on the circuit. And he was, he's an incredible whistleblower. And he basically was involved with what's called SHAPE headquarters in Europe. He was given a document by his commanding officer one day when he was sitting around bored in the office. And it revealed the whole interaction of UFOs with humans. And so Bob Dean came forward as a whistleblower because he felt that the people had a right to know. When I met him, he'd already done dozens of interviews. But I kind of, he was a command sergeant major, and he was a very feisty guy. And we hit it off. And so I would ask him very provocative questions about stuff. And he loved it. So we had a great dynamic. You can watch those videos on my website. They're still there.
Nancy.
Yes. Well, I'm curious about is that over the years, the last 20 years of you doing interviews on whistleblowers, experiencers, contactees, have you noticed a change from being very dramatic to, as we all ascend, like a change, or is it still the same, or has it mellowed out some?
Do you mean between the interviewers and their,
The stories? Like a lot of these stories are like from back in the day, like the newer versions of things happening right now. Is it still the same drama, horrible, shocking type stories, or has it mellowed out any?
Well, frankly, this whole disclosure thing is basically everything I've already disclosed for 20 years. So for me, there's nothing surprising out there pretty much. And the testimonies we got, I think, were some of the best testimonies to go down in history. Whereas I do see a lot of run-of-the-mill testimonies, oh, they saw a craft and oh, this happened or that happened, but nothing very earth-shaking. The thing about the whistleblowers in Camelot is that they were so authentic. There was no predecessor out there for what we were doing. And so nobody knew what was going to happen. And, like when I interviewed John Lear and we were in his library and we filmed everything in the library as well as him. And we had interference. They tried to stop us and they tried to kill us and all kinds of crazy shit. Because also we left our homes. We went out to the world and interviewed people. And we even flew to Norway and interviewed Leo Zagami, who people are interviewing now, right? Well, I was one of the first people to ever interview him. And, there's a whole story behind that. He got possessed literally by, I guess you want to call the devil or whatever you want to call it. After that, shortly after I interviewed him, he openly shares this story. I think it's in it. He probably still talks about it, but it was incredible what happened to him. And he came out the other side and he was, he's now on what appears to be a good path, for his life. And he had, I think he had a wife and child that he was very concerned about that, made him want to change his life and so on and so forth. But there was an excitement about everything that was, we had people sitting on the edge of their seats waiting to get our latest video back in those days. Like we used to joke about being like Sonny and Cher or something of the UFO world. And we also, I would edit these crazy 2-hour interviews, we would get them uploaded. We would actually steal the upload, like by driving by late at night an Apple store and just parking next to it and then stealing because back then they didn't even have private, whatever you call those, URL type things where you could get in and tap join their network, right?
Yeah, hotspots.
So that actually kept us going because we were always on the move. We were always interviewing people and all of this. And so the powers that be didn't really have their whistleblower system down when we already started. And people like Julian Assange actually watched our stuff. He told us that. And Edward Snowden and Julian Assange came to the fore later during those 20 years, but they were, cracked down on. And so that was to show people, the whistleblowers, that, don't mess with us, don't come forward. So that put a damper on whistleblower testimony in general. And so even now, people like David Grush are being threatened behind the scenes. If you listen to him at the UAP hearing and others, they're scared shitless still, because even though they're supposedly put a law in place to protect them, they are still getting threatened, because part of our secret space program wants disclosure and the other part does not. The satanic part does not. And so that's a dilemma. And, I'm still interfered with in all kinds of ways. They mess with shows, knock me off the air, but it was much worse in the past,
Right. We try to bring you back on the air because it's important that people know what you have to say. But you do have a question from Eduardo Gonzalez Nieto. How can you identify a false whistleblower? What are the clues, do's, and don'ts?
Well, now after 20 years of testimony, I have quite a overview of the entire playing field. So I can spot when somebody is bullshitting. But back in the day when we did one whistleblower at a time, I, again, was a psychic intuitive, and I became more and more psychic as time went on and tuned into this sort of job that I do. And I would find myself knowing whether someone was trying to lie to me or obfuscate, or they were afraid, or, not answering a question that I ask. And, I think some of my interactions with whistleblowers became pretty famous because I'd never back down. I'm just, I'm kind of a relentless seeker because I want the people to know. I believe the people have a right to the truth. I think they can handle the truth. And so that's what motivates me every day when I wake up, to get the truth out there, and basically I dedicated myself to that all those years ago. And at the time, Bill Ryan did as well. But then we had a breakup because it was about 2 years in where we started to diverge in some pretty major ways. And he got mad at one of our whistleblowers and tried to out them. And one of our agreements with our whistleblowers, of course, was that we would never reveal, where they live, their home, their family, anything like that. We would never do that. But he broke that promise. And at that point, we split up because I could not, have a person like that. When you're a journalist, you're trained to protect your sources. That's just famous. Right. So I came from that school of thought. Bill had a different philosophy, and he also became a prepper. So he kind of got a different mentality about his life. And he also met up and had a girlfriend who didn't like me.
Oh, that'll work.
So that also contributed to our breakup. And Scientology. He's a renegade Scientologist, part of what's called Ron's org.
Yeah.
But I didn't like Scientology at all. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And I appreciate that they know a lot of the secrets that are true. I mean, Ron and what's his name? Ugh, I forget his name. But anyway, the guy who runs it.
Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard.
Yes.
But I studied it, I looked over it and all of that, but I just hit me wrong, man. And I just knew there was a lot of bullshit in there, and I couldn't stand them because I lived in Hollywood, and they tried to recruit me when I was walking down. I was very young and I was just there and going to my apartment or something, and they tried to bring me in and give me these tests and shit. And I've always been suspicious of people in authority anyway, or who act like they think they are. So, I didn't buy it. And that was a big contributing factor to our split up as well.
I think everybody thinks that they're in authority or had power over others. Congress, for instance. Anyways, going down to Polly. Polly?
Oh my God, I'm so glad to hear your story because I feel so related. You know, we are born and we think we have our path. And I myself studied journalism, and I never thought it was going to take this way. Exactly as you, the meaning, like my everyday meaning of life is this issue. And so it's so exciting to see how it's not coincidences, but it's just our path. And it's beautiful. I'm so proud of you and thank you so much for
Okay.
everything you've done all these years. My question is more related kind of to my own experience. I think I was taken to a craft where an hybridization program is running there. I am taken there to help the hybrids, babies that were just born. They all had these huge gray eyes, but super humanoid. And there was a praying mantis there. So my
Oh,
question would be, one, what is the task of the praying mantis in all these phenomenon? And two, if hybrids are here, let's say, in order to help us with this disclosure, let's say, are they a threat in the point of view of the government? Are hybrids a threat for the government as hybrids?
okay. I'm not sure I heard the complete sentences, but I understand that you want to know about the praying mantis. We call them also
Yes.
mantid, and also you have had an interaction with them, and you also want to know if aliens are a threat. If I understand it, is that right?
No, the aliens, the hybrids, from the government point of view.
From the government, what?
Are
Point
hybrids a
of
threat?
The what?
Do the government see the hybrids as a threat? Kind
Does the
of, they
government
would,
see the hybrids? You mean the hybrid people, the human hybrids? Does the
yes.
government see the human hybrid? Well, actually, that's what my article is about that I was just showing you guys at the beginning. We can sort of click over to it when you're ready. But so basically, what happens now? Do you know who Simon Parks is?
Yes.
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 Okay, so he considers himself, well, a mantid reptilian hybrid, human hybrid. Okay. Now, I think lately he doesn't want to include the reptilian part, but I don't think you can walk away from that once you've been saying that for 10 years or whatever it is, but whatever. So he's a good friend of mine, and he's definitely a hybrid. And, people are hybridized. So that's what my article is about, because a lot of people only focus on the gray human hybrids, which is a program that went on south of the border mostly, but also in the United States prior to that. And possibly in other parts of the world, but I'm not as familiar with how it conducted itself, in other countries. But I can tell you how it operated here. And so what happens is, according to my article, should I click on it? Is that all right? Or do you want to
Sure,
show
go
it?
right ahead.
Yeah.
Sure, please.
I just want to show you the picture. So I made this picture and I wrote this article at 4 a.m. last night. And so because someone asked me a question, they sent me a question in email. So I decided first I wasn't going to answer it. Then I decided I'd answer it a little bit. And then I just started writing and I got into it. So then it ended up to be an article. So then I published it. So their question is on there and it's published on my Telegram and also on my Substack. So the bottom line is is just how the gray human hybrid, because there is a person called Michael Sala, Dr. Michael Sala, who is also an investigator of this subject matter, also interviews whistleblowers. He came along after, I was already operational for many years, but whatever. And then he, has been doing that and writing books and everything. So he and a few other people, Courtney Brown and also Elena Denon, and a few other people were mentioned in the question. I didn't mention those people, but I'll just say it here. And when he gave me the information that they were saying about the Gray Human Hybrid program, I realized that people didn't really understand how prolific the hybridization of humanity has been over the ages. And that is all revealed in the Oceana Dean Voyager books by a group of races that banded together, calling themselves the Guardian races. And they, in essence, dictated the books to her. And the books are like beyond anything you've ever read. They're very intricate. They're very sophisticated. They go way more into the past of humanity than the Bible. Way earlier than that. So it's very valuable to see what she wrote and all the different. She talks about every race that came to the planet and then tried to mess with us and create hybrids. So we have been exposed to hybridization probably ever since we came here. And there's reason to believe that perhaps we already were hybridized before we got here. But a lot of certain people, like James from the Wingmakers, if you've ever heard of wingmakers.com, thinks that, and many other people think that real humans came from Lyra, okay? And that eventually we left that planet. I think it was invaded by reptilians or whatever it was, or Draco. And then we came here to Earth, and we were late to Earth in the sense that the Draco and reptilians were already here and considered Earth theirs. So, and then they are expert geneticists, so they started to hybridize us. So the Gray Human Hybrid program is actually one of the last versions of hybridization that we've experienced, although the most recent one is COVID, in case you're not aware. So, and that was conducted by our very own military with the help of the Grays to turn us into what Captain Mark Richards, who I've interviewed 12 times. He's in Solano prison on charges that he murdered a man who happened to be a pedo, but he didn't do the murder. 3 young guys did it. And he's supposed to be the mastermind, but he's been in prison for over 35 years. I went to that prison and interviewed him 12 times in person. And I have a book that I'm about to release containing all of that. So I don't know if I'm putting too much in here, and I'm getting my audience confused. But if you want to ask me specific questions about what I just said, that's fine.
The secret space program?
Sorry?
No, you can go on about your article.
Oh, well, I don't, other than reading it, I recommend you read it. It's not that long. I say a lot of things in that article about that I think are not maybe widely known. I've been talking about them for many, many years. But, people forget, you watch a video where someone talks about this kind of stuff. And now it's so common that they probably don't even pay attention. But I have video after video where I've mentioned this. But the bottom line is, I found out this information from Dan Burish back in the day, who told us that the Grays that came, first of all, there's dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of different races of Grays. And the Zetas are not positively oriented towards humanity. They have lied to us, deceived us. They're known as tricksters. So some people have the misconception that, oh, the Zetas are so sweet and nice and everything. Well, they're not. I mean, and there's documented evidence to that effect that they're not. but you can believe what you want to believe. So they come across very nice and like they're trying. Occasionally, you know, they do give humanity good information, but sometimes they're wrong and they lie. And one of the things that they're wrong about, and they're proven wrong about, is they used to, this is back over 10 years, 15 years ago or more. And they used to say, oh, you know, there's going to be, you know, these cataclysms and they're going to happen tomorrow, so to speak. And, you know, they never did. So, you know, whatever you want to say about that. But there are all kinds of different grays, and some, or even I would say most, are AI. They're run by AI. So they're actually, and some of them are just biological programmable entities is what they're called. And even our military started creating grays because they're not hard to create. They're a hybridized, again, they're hybrids from reptilians. So they're a reptilian hybrid that is made in the shape of, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, that kind of thing. But they also go from little ones to big orange ones that are like, you know, 6 or 8 feet tall, whatever.
What they are used for.
I have a video of 2 grays on the video that when I was on the air. And if you haven't seen it, you can go watch it. And it was actually one of our viewers that told us that we had grays in the background of my video, just like I'm talking to you right now. If there were some grays and they got caught on camera behind me, well, we were videotaping in the show. We were doing the show live, and the computer, you know, camera caught like on behind my shoulder these 2 little grays that were peeking around the corner. Now, I can't say whether the military, because this is above a military base in Arizona where it happened. And the guy who, I don't know if I can remember his name, but it's on my website. And if anyone wants the information, I can send it to him. And we even had that clip was put on TV. It was bought from us and shown on TV. And they really were little grays, you know. So some of them are just really tricksters. And like in Norway, we were sort of, I don't know what you want to call it. I spent the whole night fighting these little gray things where they were trying to deceive me or do something. And I was just, you know, telling them to go away and get out and all this kind of thing. And they were hiding and peeking around these things. And I basically woke Bill up and said, we're getting the hell out of this hotel. So we did. We left there at like 5 a.m. That's my dog. I don't know what's going on with her. So anyway, I'm not sure. I might be jumping around a bit here.
That's okay. We enjoy your conversation. That's fine. Okay. What I want to touch upon is you heard about that CIA document that came out in May of 2000. It supposedly happened, but it was just declassified this year in regards to the 25 soldiers that were exposed to a bright white light from the merging of 5 alien grays into a sphere and exploding into white light, which caused the men to turn into molecular limestone. Can you elaborate any on that?
No, it sounds familiar, but I'm not, you know, super, that's not one of our cases, and I'm not very familiar with that particular case. I've heard cases like that, and you know, I mean, it's not surprising what they can do, okay? So right. I'm not impressed, to say the truth, anymore by this kind of stuff, because, you know, we're in that world. We're part of that world. We're, you know, right now we're dealing with AI. You know, I was abducted around the age of 12, had repetitive abduction dreams. And I had an implant in my arm that's still there from that time. And and I have a weird birthmark as well from when I was born. I think they were genetically messing with me even in my mother's womb. So I was born with this really strange birthmark. And I was
Question.
born in Palo Alto at Moffett Field in a military hospital. And I think I was, and it's all in my book. I have a book called Rebel Gene. So if you want to know more about my personal story, it's in there. And I also tried to compile a lot of the stuff that I covered over the years in there. But, there's always more stuff. And I've been doing this nonstop for, it's really kind of a 24/7 job.
Right.
And so I could be contacted at any night or day by somebody who has a story, or somebody who knows somebody who has a story, wants to talk to me, so-and-so. A lot of our whistleblowers, they came to us. We didn't go to them. I think people didn't really realize it back in those days, but that's the way it happened. We got a reputation, I guess you might say. And so as far as that particular Russian story, I did go to Russia, and we did, and interviewed Boriska, who's considered to be the boy from Mars, who, when he was 7 years old, he was walking up and down his town. He would tell people, their psychic history. He would tell them he was considered himself a soldier from Mars that died on Mars and came to Earth in his next incarnation. So I interviewed him. It's a fabulous interview. It's very famous. People use my footage without paying us or giving us credit. Even British newspapers have that footage on their newspapers, and I've had to write to them and tell them, you used my footage, you used my photographs, you used my story without my permission. You should have paid me, blah, blah, blah. I have the rights, but, they just ignore me. So,
sad.
I know I've had experience in Russia. We went to Moscow, we went to St. Petersburg, we interviewed Valery Uvarov, who was a scientist, and he also was head of what was the FSB Weird Desk. Like, we have a counterpart in the CIA called Ron Pandolfi, who's head of the Weird Desk here in America, or was for many, many years. I think he's retired by now.
What I was going to ask is, where is Rebel Gene? Where can we purchase Rebel Gene?
Oh, it's on my website. You can just click it and it takes you to Amazon. It's 5 stars on Amazon.
Okay, good. So if anybody wants her book, Rebel Gene, pick it up on Amazon, okay, under KERRY CASSIDY. I'm sure you have other books as well.
Well, I'm actually about to publish one. That's what I'm talking about, by a whistleblower who knows more than most anyone. I think he used to report to Bobby Ray Inman, and he said about Bobby Ray Inman that he knew more than anyone else, pretty much. And that was coming from Mark Richards. And Mark Richards I sat and peppered him with questions for like 2 or 3 hours at a time. Every time in person at the prison, I would take notes. I call it total recall, because I would leave the prison, turn on a tape recorder, and try to regurgitate everything he'd said, and then write it all. Then I published it on videos. So those videos are available where I give the whole recall. Now I've compiled all that into a book. So I'm about to publish that. But those are the only 2 books. I don't have a bunch of books. I've been so busy in my life interviewing people. I mean, even now, and now I get interviewed half the time. I didn't used to get interviewed. I used to only interview. But then about, 6 or 7 or 10 years ago, they started interviewing me as well. So now every week, there's so many people that don't even know this, believe it or not, because I was banned from YouTube in 2021. And ever since then, people who used to come to my channel all the time think I left the earth or something. They just never got the fact that I have, all these other social media. Mm-hmm. I have a website, even though it's out there, people are kind of lazy and they don't really pay attention. So, but I was a YouTube director before, like I said, anyone else. And so I was on YouTube from the very, very beginning of YouTube and Google. And I became a creator, a YouTube creator kind of thing, and all that stuff. And then overnight, we had 70 million viewers worldwide, like a television station, basically. And we had, I think it was 363 or 363,000 subscribers. And overnight, because one of my guests that was there with me, Robert David Steele, halfway through the video said one sentence about COVID, and they deleted my whole channel.
Wow.
And luckily, people were being deleted at that time. So I had prepared by going out to these other alternative possibilities and just signing up. I never did anything with them, but I just signed up just in case I quickly needed to, because I sort of have premonition. So then what happened was that night at 12 midnight, I got this premonition that something that was said in that video could get me what you call a strike. 3 strikes, you're out, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went and I removed the video to what you call the unlisted portion, which means that it wasn't open to the public. You had to have the URL, and you only get that on my website. So, but they deleted me anyway. So they basically, I could sue them, and I do hope in the future to sue them. I'm not kidding, because that was my whole income. That's how I survived, was ads on YouTube. And like I said, they deleted me overnight, and that was actually illegal what they did, based on their parameters, because their parameter was community guidelines, that they were going to protect the people from the truth. And they, because it was harmful or something. And so that's where they come up with their censorship. And they're still doing it. I've tried to start other channels on YouTube with different email addresses, various things. My most recent effort, which is probably about 6 months ago, lasted a week and I was deleted. So the AI is on to me, so I can't go back to YouTube. But they're still censoring people like crazy.
You were doing pretty well on that 1 week YouTube site too, because I was over there and I saw it and I was like, "Oh, she's back!"
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden, boom.
So I'm on Rumble. I have zillions now. I'm getting more and more videos, even from the past, coming over to Rumble. But I also, at the time, what I was going to say about being deleted overnight is Odyssey, unbeknownst to most people, was sucking up YouTube channels that were being deleted and giving them back to the people that owned them. And I was one of them. And thank God they saved 965 of my videos. But there were lots of unlisted videos that they didn't save. But I had backed up. I have backup of all my videos. So
due to you, I actually have a backup channel on Odyssey. So thank you, Kerry.
Okay.
And I'm also on Rumble, but I don't see so much traffic on Rumble. It's very hard to get traffic.
And I have a huge Telegram channel. I have about, they keep trying to ghost me. So I went from 100,000, more than 100,000. Now I'm down to 88,000 or something. But I don't know, I don't think that many people just decide all of a sudden they don't want to hear it. I mean, I think that's insane. So they must be delisting me, in some weird way. But the bottom line is that I do have a lot of viewers over there, and I do post there almost every single day of my life.
Good.
So I post all my shows on there. I post all the articles I write, as well as the other people write that I like, or even things that I question, just to bring people's attention to them, news articles, etc. And then I also write commentary. And I write commentary, and sometimes I go on there at 4 a.m. and if something's really bothering me, I start ranting about it. So it's a fun place to go, and I do highly recommend it.
Good. one thing I was going to ask you about was, what is your knowledge about suppressed celestial history?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, this is
Celestial history is,
celestial history.
well,
We are celestial history.
right. What I'm saying is the celestial history that has been suppressed throughout the ages from the tribes of man in regards to the real truth about our origins.
Well, that's what I
And-
was talking about. See, the guardian races, Ashanadine, for my purposes, okay, I do not believe the Bible. I do not trust the Bible. I know that it was taken over, that even Jesus wouldn't like the Bible. People don't like hearing me say this, but it's true. And, you know, I read it when I was young, but I didn't grow up in a family where they read Bibles, okay? They didn't, that's not what happened in my family. So, you know, I was never pushed or made to believe anything. I created my own interpretation of the world and everything. And when I came across Ashana Dean's books and work, I psychically knew it was real and true. It was like I knew it, and it was just very familiar. And I ended up I interviewed her, one of the few people that's ever interviewed her. And I went with her and her group and toured India. And I had some very incredible psychic experiences on that trip and so on. So those books are all about the true history, not just of humanity, but of the cosmos, of what we're part of, you know, whatever you want to call that, this interplanetary, you know, matrix and all the dynamic wars between various alien races as well. I mean, it's jam packed with stuff. But you know, there are other people. I mean, I've read the raw material. I think the raw material is good to a point, and then they start lying to you and they don't tell you a lot of truth. So I got frustrated with that. I've read the Urantia book or parts of it. I like a little bit of it, but some of it is just, you know, more nonsense. You know, there's different things that resonate with me. Everyone has to find their own truth. You know, you can't rely on someone else to say that's true. You have to see what resonates, which is your heart and your mind in unison. You know, you feel it. It's like a very powerful sort of resonance is what it's called. And I think you need to depend on that. And if something resonates, even if it's not true, it might be a path you need to follow to find out the truth. So I wouldn't just discard it because even if you have a sneaking suspicion, it's wrong. You know, we are here to experience. We're here to find out, you know, the truth of who we are and to do missions to help the rest of humanity wake up to who they are. That's the way I see it. Okay. So we're all here on a mission, every single one of us.
Hey, Nos, I need you to step in.
All right. So yeah, when we're looking at this disclosure that's not happening, you know, because it's all stuff that's been known before, right? The relationship between humans and celestial beings was documented by every single tribe of humanity that got the ability to write, that got the ability to make emojis, right? Every tribe on the planet documented the celestial human relationship.
Right.
And we're in a state of existence for a generation of humanity that believes that humans are the most supreme intelligence in the universe.
That's
right.
not true.
Yeah, but I mean that's the way most of our culture was raised. Is, oh, you know, well, there's this special sky father that'll give you cake if you do what he tells you to. But other than that, you know, humans are the supreme biological beings of the universe, and all of our ancestors knew that wasn't the case. Right. You go back to what we had a couple of thousand years ago, and every tribe of humanity understood their relationship. with the celestial beings. And, they went through the effort of writing all these things down, and then we get these developing religious organizations that specifically seek out those histories to destroy them, to abscond with them, to hoard that away from the rest of society, and keep altering the histories they have access to sell a better religion. So the process,
Religion is the opiate of the masses is a very famous saying you might have heard.
Yeah.
But with this circumstance, I've been able to do it multiple different ways, but I've been able to create AI algorithm that restores the history that was deleted.
Okay.
So all the effort that they put into removing access to that history from humanity so that they could spin their version of reality, I can regenerate it. They couldn't get rid of it. It's preserved in a special way across the information, across the cultures, but using accepted academic practices is how I program the algorithm. It's all accepted academic principles, but it will rebuild the histories that were destroyed by doing so.
Okay. Well, you're working with an AI?
Yeah, I've got a team of people. We're working with multiple AIs because we got a lot of stuff that we're doing. But my ability to do this is part of my programming. I am gathering together other people that come from specific bloodlines that are part of that history that was deleted. And once you have the recreation, and I can drop the link in there and give access to it.
Sure. Maybe I should interview you.
Yeah.
You should. She's a good interview.
You'll find that there is a lot of information here. I give access to an evidentiary archive that is in Google Drive, all of my own documents. There's nothing in there that can be considered classified because it's all part of official records, that nothing is classified, and other stuff are records that I kept myself that were my own personal property. I have 6 different ways to expose and take down the shadow government because I was designed to have them. And when you go through the information, you'll find out, oh, this is on track. The evidence is there to support what's going on. And thanks to a video I did with Tim a while back, there's even a video on there where I actually show biological authentication of my otherness.
Yeah, her hair. You can see it on YouTube.
It's humans humans can have hair that fluoresces under UV light where it glows a certain color, either like green or something along those lines. But humans do not have iridophores. So iridophores are the cells like on insect wings or in the inside of an oyster shell that creates that rainbow appearance depending on the angle that you view the light from, right? The texture change.
We are light beings, so I'm not sure I would completely agree with you, but you have to reach a certain development. In my case, I have done Kundalini activation, and I have linked all my chakras and had multiple samadhi experiences ever since I was in my 20s. So what you're capable of becomes a much wider playing field when you do that. And of course, yogis have demonstrated that through the real yogis, through the ages and so on and so forth. So, but in the end of the day, we are light. That's what we are. We're light beings.
Yep. And this body is just a vessel.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it makes me wonder if all these UFOs that we're seeing are not nuts and bolts, but biomechanical. I mean,
some of them are plasma vehicles, definitely.
Right.
And by the way, the secret space program, people like Hal Puthoff, they know all about this. Okay. They are studying these things all the time.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if that might be one of the reasons why the US government itself isn't releasing information, definitive information to say, okay, we know where these things are coming from. We know who's piloting them. We know what their intentions are, because they aren't sure exactly where they're coming from. I mean, they say, oh, we know they're coming from space, or they're coming from under the oceans, or they're coming from under the ground, right? From the volcanoes and such. But
the secret space program, according to my whistleblowers, knows exactly, yes, where they're coming from. In other words, we have something called Solar Warden that guards this solar system. You've heard of it. And, outside goes, they use, like you mentioned earlier, like Henry Deacon talked about, jump rooms used to go to Mars and back for lunch, for example. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about portal tech, and Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis are scientists that have been working on that for a long time. Robert Bigelow. These people have this knowledge as well. They are tangential to the actual secret space program, but they're kind of like a bridge group. The usual suspects, to the Stars Academy, all those people, Christopher Mellon, etc. They know exactly what the hell is going on. And according to my whistleblower, they also know when they see a craft incoming, they can tell you what beings are inside there. They can actually read it now. We have a technology that's way beyond what we understand in conventional surface Earth.
Yeah, considering we had something called the flux liner back in the 40s that was actually operational, according to Mark McCandlish, and that supposedly had hyperluminal drive. So if it had a hyperluminal drive, we already had light speed.
Right. Well, Michael Schratt is a good friend of mine, and I've interviewed him dozens of times. He's going to be on my show, I think, tomorrow.
But, that's cool.
Yeah, he's very cool, and he knows all this stuff. He's documenting all this stuff, going into archives and archives to get all the old history and to make sure that they don't disappear it.
Right.
So, he's doing a heroic job, in my view.
Michael Schratt is awesome. He's been on the channel, and he's done a deep dive into a lot of craft, which he believes are human piloted and actually reverse engineered craft versus being actual alien vehicles.
Yeah, and I mean, it's both, so it's just like the drone incursions in New Jersey and all that. Those are both, some of them were ours and some of them are theirs. And, some of them are actual drones and some of them are, remotely operated by both aliens and or us. This game that they play where they try to tell you a bunch of lies, it's just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I mean, you learn eventually, if you follow this sector long enough, you learn to see through the lies. You learn, when they're obfuscating.
Right. Before we go on to our next panelist, we have a question from the chat room. Kerry, do you have any additional information regarding Max Spear's death or what he was planning to reveal?
Well, I was actually in a very weird sequence of events. I was actually on the phone when he died with the people that were at the house where he died. So I do know some things, and I was talking to one of the guys that was there. And Miles Johnston was also in contact. I know that I think he's called Richard the Lionheart. I think he was a reincarnation of him. He was would visit that island where Richard Lionheart was from, and he did seem to contact some kind of I don't know if you want to call it germ warfare or some kind of, mysterious poison that they gave him, but supposedly died from that. They tried to resuscitate him and keep him alive, keep his body alive, but through black magic, actually. But they were not successful. And stuff. There was a lot of goings on, a lot of nefarious stuff. As far as what he wanted to reveal, I mean, I think he was revealing things. I don't know, obviously I don't know what he wanted to say that he couldn't say. That would just be conjecture in my part.
Right.
But he was misled also by, what's his name? Whose name is escaping me at this moment. But I interviewed this guy. He's a super soldier. He was sort of a mentor to Max. You probably know who. It's just been so many years.
Tony Rodriguez?
No.
Okay.
No. This guy is a really flamboyant guy. He ended up marrying the heiress to some kind of famous heiress, and then he exposed something about her, and the Illuminati took him down and threw him in jail. He was in prison for several years. Whether they also let him out to do operations, of course, we don't know, but it's probably true. He was also a Nazi. He also was split personalities, and originally he actually reported to me on Camelot, and I have a very long written bunch of information that he gave us when he was a good guy, when he was actualizing that side of himself. And then Michael Prince, but that's not the name he came to me originally as. And then when he became Michael Prince, an alter, then he was a Nazi, and I interviewed him. So I have a pretty well-known video with him, Max Spears, and this young, at the time, another kind of guy that was doing investigations was there with me. So that's a story. It's a saga. It's typical. They're doing operations all the time. On humans. They love to deceive humans and play with them like toys and shit.
Okay, Polly.
Kerry, you were talking before about your own implant. In 2006, I had 2 brain surgeries. And in one of those surgeries, they found a little cube inside a cyst that they took out. Did you hear before about an implant in a cube shape? And what is the point of the implants? I've been thinking lately that maybe this is not made only to track us as individuals, but maybe it's a way for them to organize us as families, like if all the ones that we have cubed implants, maybe we are part of the same family. And that's
Right.
a way for them to organize it.
But the military implants us, and so does various alien races. And the Greys also implant us. So, I mean, a lot of people have more than one implant, but they're from different alien races. And in some cases, they're tracking devices so they can see where you are anytime you're on the planet, right? And in some cases, they're protective. They're going to protect you if you have an implant. And in some cases, they are following you so that they can see what you're doing and all that stuff. I mean, one of the implants they do is in your eyes so that you are actually a camera they can see through. So whatever you look at, they look at. There's people like that. But yeah, implants are very common. I think I might have missed the beginning of your question though.
Have you heard about implants that have a cube shape?
Oh, a cube shaped implant. I mean, mine is round, so it's not cube shaped. Not so much, actually. Most of the implants, I think, are, I don't know if you remember, Dr. Roger Lear is a
Yes.
doctor who removed implants from people. And they would show them, they're on pictures, there's photos. And a lot of them are not even round. I mean, mine's like a round ball in this one arm that I have. It's very obvious. You can feel it. It's round.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all different shapes. I mean, yeah, I've interviewed many people that have been implanted and, had ET contact and all of that kind of thing.
Yes. Thank you.
You have that mark also on your leg, don't you, Holly? That looks exactly like the implant that Terry Lovelace has below his knee.
Right. I woke up
Yeah, Terry
once
Love.
after one of my experiences, and I had like this kind of dog paw as a mark, like Terry Lovelace did.
Well, and Tim, last year you had that surprise pneumatic injection mark that you woke up with.
Oh yeah, I had a weird mark in the middle of my chest, on my sternum, and it's still there. It's round, it's raised, it itches from time to time, and it has 5 puncture wounds in it.
Yeah, it looks just like the pneumatic jet injector marks from the 50s.
Yeah, it looks like a human vaccination mark.
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking is it was done overnight by humankind, a human abduction, rather than an alien. I don't know. I have no idea. But it appeared overnight. Now,
well, I get tested all the time. I've got these, these white scoop marks type things. That's where they scrape you so that they can get a sample. So I have that. I wake up in the morning, I've got more and more. They're always experimenting on me. It's fucking weird.
Have you taken, do you have like results of exams that you did maybe in your implants? Like what characteristics or the materials? Do you know what is it made of? Did they check it not only with an MRI or something?
I don't believe in doctors. I don't go to doctors ever.
Oh,
I have a question for you.
Ever. So I can tell you.
Do you ever wake up with like burns? I woke up with a burn the other night. I woke up with a burn on my arm, on my right arm, right here, of a square. And it was a burn. It wasn't a bruise, and it wasn't a puncture, but it was a burn mark.
Right. Well, people do wake up with, what appear to be, claw marks, all kind of thing like that. Some of these are pretty diabolical, so they're not nice, in other words.
Right. Nancy, your turn.
All right. I've heard you talk about hybrids and things like that you've met some hybrids or interviewed them. Have you ever thought about like a new wave coming down from non-human intelligent, and that is the incarnates, people that incarnate here in human form, and they're the activators of like trying to raise people's frequency. Have you ever met any people like that? Have you come across anybody?
Yeah, myself. We're all that. We're all aliens. We're all hybrids. I've met
No, I mean, like,
all of you are hybrids. Okay.
no, I'm talking
by
about like
looking at you.
your oversoul, people that know their oversoul and have
Yeah,
communication with it.
Yeah, I know my oversoul.
Oh. Where
I
do
mean,
you
I don't
originate
think
from?
that this knowledge is special in any way, frankly. I mean,
I think she's wondering if you've come into contact with anybody who is
Yes,
with a higher consciousness than what
yes,
the average human is.
exactly.
yeah, myself.
Well, I mean,
But
from what I've been told,
want to talk about
people like
other
me are
people.
placed all over the world.
I don't idolize people. I don't put them on pedestals. So I don't go around looking for gurus or any of that shit.
Oh, I'm not
So
talking about
I
that.
don't see people like that. But if you are looking for those kind of people that you think might be more elevated than other humans, you have to be the judge of it when you meet such a person. I mean, I don't know. Sean David Morton made me go see this woman who she's known for, like, I don't know, she does hugging. She hugs everybody or something like that. And, she's a guru from India. And, I was not impressed. I mean, I'm not impressed by that. Okay. So I can't tell you. I can say that Captain Mark Richards is one of the most aware people that I've ever met in my life, that he knows so much. And I hope to convey that in the book that I'm publishing, more than anyone, that pretty much. And that includes even people that supposedly are whistleblowers out there and such, So I've been very fortunate to be in contact with some people that have a great deal of knowledge, much more than your average person.
That's
Right.
what I was wanting to know, like those kind of people, not just people that make a claim, but people that you really could tell that they were above.
Yeah, I definitely would classify Captain Mark Richards in there. And I know intuitively. I actually asked Bobby Ray Inman for an interview a long time ago, kind of like a joke, because I knew he'd never do it. But I also knew he was one of the. I have a really good psychic radar on people that I can, read them quite well, and I have to for my job, right?
Right.
But I can say that, there are a lot of posers out there too, on the other side of that spectrum, who pretend they know a lot, but they don't. And I can tell that right off the bat very quickly, in my view. And, I mean, I don't know, I think I think where we're entering this time is that humans are waking up,
Yeah.
even people that you thought you knew, because they, acted normal, they looked normal, what we would call normal. And yet they may have a whole hidden side to them that is suddenly emerging,
Yeah. That's
and
what I'm thinking.
I think that's very exciting, that humanity is starting to come into its own, that hidden knowledge is coming to the surface. I think that's very wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down the list and take last questions. Nos?
If you had the ability to go back to when you were 20 years old and decide your career path, just knowing what you ran into the first time around to get you to where you are, would you instead actually choose to go straight for this subject matter?
Well, in a sense, I did, because whether I knew it or not, like I said, I was very psychic intuitive. I could see dead people, things like that when I was young. And I knew things I just knew things all the time. So I was already on that path. Actually, I think I had a really brilliant trajectory, if you want to call it that. It wasn't always easy. Okay. So I had trouble making any money to pay my rent, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
my father died when I was 17, so I kind of lost a major protector in that sense. But it made me stronger, right? Because I had to defend myself. And, I was always a fighter. I mean, I think I was equipped for this job like the most amazing way. And now when I look back, I can see all the synchronicities and things that happened that were, things that I might have thought were tragedies, at the time actually were some of the best things that ever happened. And it wasn't always easy, as I said, to go through those things, but it made me wiser and stronger, I guess you might say. So I think they did a really good job with me, whatever, if it was just me who was in charge or whether I got some help, I just think that it was a really good path. And the funny thing about it is now I came from movie making and now I'm actually returning to movie making. Yeah. So I'm in a situation, I've already said this on several shows, where they won't let me talk to whistleblowers right now. Every single whistleblower I get close to, they change their mind, they back out, they won't talk to me. And even some of the known ones that talk to all the other people won't talk to me. So people are being warned away. I'm being isolated. It's very difficult for me to do my job anymore. I interview people, but they're not whistleblowers, okay, from my point of view. And therefore, I just decided, fuck it. I'm going to go back to making movies, what I know, what I knew when I began. And now I reconnected with James of the Wingmakers. I signed a deal to represent the Wingmakers Project 20 years ago when I started on this path. And now I've gone back to activate that. And I'm actually working on his latest project. It's called Copernicus, and there's a trailer out there, and you can watch it. It's on YouTube. Just put in Copernicus, you should find it. Mm-hmm. And I'm working on that movie. So now I'm sick of being stopped from doing my real, the job that I was trained to do all these years. So hopefully then that'll be a good trajectory for me. And because it's fiction, supposedly, they'll leave me the fuck alone, stuff like that.
Maybe you can hide some truth inside that movie.
Always the plan.
Yeah, there you go.
That fiction has always paraded as fiction parading as fiction is truth. Right. 99.9% of the time, that's how authors, survived, was by hiding the truth. I mean, that's what Hollywood's been doing all these years, is telling people the truth in the form of fiction. So as bad as Hollywood has some horrible stuff behind the scenes, they also have done some very good things behind the scenes.
Nancy.
Well, what you're just speaking about, like what movies would you say were like pretty much true events? Like Close Encounters?
Yeah, that was true, right?
That's what I think too.
It was the alien human, they showed Richard Dreyfuss, suiting up to go on an alien human exchange program. That's actually, little did I know that was actually, something that I got involved with investigating. So with the Serpo.org project. So countless things. I mean, in fact, Hollywood's telling the truth more often with fiction than these liars in the secret space program and so-called whistleblowers are.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. You see
everyone's fire in the sky.
I mean, that's why kids are so smart. They watch this stuff. They take it seriously. They know it's real.
I know that a lot of movies that are portraying abductions take a lot of creative license, especially in the case of Fire in the Sky. I talked to Travis Walton about that, and he said that it's not necessarily what happened to him, but there are some things in the movie that happened to him, but most of the movie is fake. In regards to Communion, the movie about Whitley Strieber's encounter up in northern Vermont, that actually, according to Whitley, was accurate.
Whitley has written some very revealing books. I
Yes.
think he has a book called The Grays.
Mhm.
Highly recommend that. He told a lot of truth that people still don't know about the Grays in there. And I actually would say this is controversial, but I've listened to Travis Walton speak, and he's got a lot that he doesn't know about what happened to him. I can tell.
Right. Right. He's still. It seems like he's still going on what happened in his movie rather than what happened to him in his abduction.
Probably. I mean, he's had a real struggle. So, he's really done his best with
Right.
what happened to him. So you can't take that away from him. Very brave individual.
Right. He is.
Really shocking experience the way it happened. But
I got to talk.
I can just tell that he's holding back, and whether he knows he's holding back, or whether he just hasn't accessed the truth. I don't know, but it's very obvious to me.
I was able to interview Calvin Parker before he passed, and he seemed like he had a handle on the truth. He knew what happened to him.
Who's Calvin Parker?
Calvin Parker is from the Pascagoula UFO encounter, where the UFO landed on the banks of the river and two guys were fishing, and these robotic-like creatures came out of the craft that looked like Michelin men.
Oh.
And they floated over to them and touched them on the arm, like they injected their arm with something to make them immobile, and then floated them into the craft and did examinations on them, and then returned them to the bank of the river. And this all happened in broad daylight, and there were witnesses across the river who actually saw the creatures and saw the craft.
Great. Yeah.
Pascagoula UFO encounter. So I got a chance to interview him, and he seemed to have a solid grasp on it. So, okay, Polly, you're next. You're muted. Polly, you're muted. There you go.
I'm here, sorry. Yeah. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us. I feel so related to your story. The feelings also of, being alone, trying to understand all this situation and all the journalism. This is beautiful. So my last question, I think it will be, what's disclosure for you? The meaning of disclosure? And how is this actually going to happen?
Well, I try to talk about what's really going to happen in the future. And I think that people are being prepared with disclosure, that they have no choice right now. They have to do it, because we're going to come into a war that's kinetic with aliens and AI. And so that's in our future. Camelot was told about it many, many years ago, that first we would have, a war with China, a war with Iran. And then that was just going to be preparation for the war with off-planet races. So we have off-planet races that have, bases honeycombed into the earth. We are, invaded, and we're controlled. And we need to become sovereign. We need to kick some of these people out, these beings. And I don't know where it's all going to head, but I think that we're headed for that, or for some kind of battles with those beings. And I know the military has been preparing for this for a very long time. So they're trying to prepare the people so they don't just, I guess, freak out.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's in the offing in the future. So it's not just disclosure for the sake of disclosure. It's actually disclosure that the military has a purpose behind it. Okay. And that's because this thing is going to happen. And other people are talking about it. I'm not the only one, but I was given this information. So it makes sense to me based on all the signs and signals I'm seeing lately. And I think humans, I don't see these things as necessarily bad. I see this as a brave new world. I see this as the future of humanity. I see this as a challenge, for us to be the best we can be, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that we're being challenged. And I think that all the races on various planets, because there's zillions of planets out there, and there's actually zillions of human type beings on those planets. And I think that when you reach a certain level of awareness and frequency, that you attract these adversaries that actually force you to become even more of who you are and to tap into your superpowers and so and so. So that's where I think we're headed. And so I actually look at the future with, I think with good, I think it's good. And I think that we're going to survive. Most of, our humanity is going to survive. And, we all reincarnate anyway. So you can come back and try something else if it didn't work this time. But I do think that, some of us will be ascending, so we don't come back necessarily to this version of Earth. But, I have a positive view of the future in general. So I look forward to it.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, KERRY, for being here this evening. We want to have you back sometime again soon. So
Okay.
hopefully sooner than a year from now. I'd like to
Yeah,
have
it
you
was a
back.
long time ago.
Yeah, I'd like to have you back in about three months or so
Okay.
before, and I will contact you and keep in touch, okay?
Okay.
I hope your move went okay.
Yeah, it's great. I love my new place. It's not perfect, but it's way better than where I was. And, I have more freedom here. So I like it. It's really nice. My animals like it, my dog and my cat. So
That's
it's
good.
great. I'm not fully unpacked yet. I still have boxes sitting around and all that kind of stuff, but I'm good.
We're glad that you're happier, and that's always a good thing. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on again and being so gracious to attend our live show. I want to thank everybody on the panel. I also want to thank everybody who watched online and who also participated in the chat room. You were very engaging and very kind to our guests. So thank you very much.
Well, that's a change. No, just kidding. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate all that. And Polly, you sound like you're a contactee. Obviously, if you have a story to tell and you want to come on my show, you're welcome.
Oh my God, that would be such an honor. Thank you so much. Of course.
No problem.
Thank
No
you.
You should also interview Nos, I swear, because of
Yeah,
his
I've already
Western
told
knowledge.
him that. I think he got the message.
Yeah.
so
She's got the link that gives
Yeah.
her all the contact information and lots of.
I don't know enough about Nancy to know whether to interview her or not, but you can contact me and say I do this and so, and here's my website and everything like that. And
You
then,
actually promised to interview me about a year ago. And that-
oh, really?
It still hasn't come.
Yeah, no, I'd love it. So yeah, contact me. You have to.
Okay, we will.
The best way is to text my my phone, to text my WhatsApp. That's the best way
The
to.
WhatsApp, gotcha.
Because I get tons of emails. So if you send me an email, you never hear from me. it's
Right.
just too hard. It's really hard to keep track of everything.
Right.
So, you all sound like really interesting people, and I'd be happy to have you on my show.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so everybody out there in internet land, we all say thank you for coming and have a good evening.